Good afternoon. So they asked me to spend a few minutes talking about the most fascinating topic you can think of, which is corporate governance. So we reached out to our friends at Stroz Friedberg to have a little fireside chat, and they nominated a guy named Ed Glover to join me here on stage for a little chat. Ed agreed to it with one condition. He said, I want to ask Bob the questions. Now, in full transparency, Ed worked for me for about 6 years as the compliance guy at Sun Microsystems, so I think this is going to be a little bit of payback. But without further ado, Ed, come on up and join me. Ed Glover. Good to see you. So I'm all yours for a few minutes. You get to.
Well, I just want to quickly point out, Stroz Friedberg, if you're not familiar with us, we're a cybersecurity company. We focus on leading edge expertise in breach investigations, digital forensics, incident response, and what we call security science, which is around assessments and proactive services, penetration, e-discovery, and we do due diligence for our customers. And we were just recently, about a year ago, bought out by Aon. And what that brings together is a comprehensive view on risk reduction solutions and strategies for the customer. So this is something that is we're seeing a lot of, especially in the board. We're hearing about all these different types of breaches and the things that are going on. And the board is now needed to take more of a closer look at all of this. Especially in the last couple of years, I think more and more boards are beginning to be concerned because there is a wind out there that there could be regulations that might be forced upon us if we don't start taking more of a proactive approach. But one of the things the boards need to think about is bringing people on the board who have a really good understanding of risk. It's not an easy area to understand. And the board also needs to start looking at potentially funding a risk program, not just from a cybersecurity, but from a holistic standpoint, because you have legal risk, you have third-party risk, vendors, you have financial risk, business risk, and of course security and technology risk and process risk. So a lot of companies are beginning to look at up-leveling the risk program into a higher level. I've actually seen some companies bring in what they call a CSO above the CISO to look at risk at a larger perspective and have more access to the board. Now, Bob, you've been around for quite a while. I've been in some very successful companies as a CIO. So working with the board over 25 years now, you've seen a lot of changes. I'm curious about your opinion.
You know, back when we were kind of roaming the halls at Sun 25 years ago, cybersecurity was talked about, but certainly not with the level of sophistication and urgency that I think you hear about now. I'm very blessed. Our board at Juniper is very technically literate. They have a very high standard with regard to compliance and security. And they, for that reason, I think, take a very active role in helping us frame policy and approaches to cybersecurity. But it's absolutely important, in my experience at the 3 public companies I've worked at, it's very, very important that you approach the board not with technical babble, right? You got to approach the conversation from a risk perspective, a risk conversation, an insurance conversation, a data protection conversation. Because frankly, the technology in this space is the easy part, right? Bakash and Kevin show you all these beautiful charts and it looks really complicated, but in the end, it's kind of easy, right? It's easier to enforce policy on the firewall, but getting alignment with the board and the CEO and the C-suite in general about risk tolerance, policy tolerance, cultural approaches to it. So you really got to start with a conversation that's about the culture of the company, what's important to the fabric of the company, and then kind of work down from there.
Mm-hmm. Have you been seeing more and more of the board bringing people with risk backgrounds on to be part of the board of directors versus just trying to get them educated?
Yeah, I've seen that certainly here in the Valley. We've seen boards who have established enterprise risk management teams, right? And the independence of those groups is very important, right? You don't want the enterprise risk guys working and living in IT, certainly, or even engineering. You need that independence. And so I think the board looks to those groups as almost like they do internal audit. It's another independent view into the risks facing the company. So we have a very healthy enterprise risk management team at Juniper, staffed with a bunch of really tough lawyers who grill us appropriately and keep us honest and so on. But it's a very healthy, productive conversation because it gets to that issue of we can talk all day about data and number of servers and firewalls and everything else, but if we don't understand the most critical data the company owns and is concerned with, you can't base a risk management program around.
Now, does this enterprise risk management program, or whoever's in charge of that, do they do monthly reports to the board of directors on the risks that are being seen at Juniper Networks and providing kind of a view of what needs to be addressed?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a standing agenda topic for the Juniper board for the enterprise risk management team to talk to the board either privately or in the larger session. Likewise, there's a standing quarterly update to the board from a cybersecurity point of view. So both the enterprise risk management team and myself, representing the cyber issues, have a regular, sitting with the board, if you will, and it keeps the dialogue open. It keeps it fresh. It's not a once a year sort of update. I think that's the currency is important.
Okay. When do the board feel like do you feel like the board is providing you with the resources you need, whether it's a budget resources, never enough resources,
That's a loaded
I
question.
guess.
My boss is sitting right in the front row. I need more budget. No.
But because what I've been seeing out there, and Juniper Networks is somewhat unique compared to a lot of other companies out there because they're not providing the type of budgets and the resources that is going to be needed to really prevent these risks from resulting in security breaches and potential losses to the company. And this is something that I think that most board of directors and companies need to be more aware of and need to really embrace that. Especially, larger companies I think they get it, but there's a lot of other companies out there that don't really understand it. And we're an interconnected world. We're connected with everybody, our partners, especially our partners. We're seeing a lot of security breaches coming through our partners, and we've heard a couple of big ones that way.
Yeah, I think what's maybe unique at Juniper a little bit is there's a certain sensitivity around the security topic because Juniper's products are used in such sensitive places, right? Critical infrastructure of governments worldwide. So whether it be your run-of-the-mill engineer all the way up to the C-suite, I think from the first day I've been there, there's a sensibility around how important security is. And that permeates up into the board as well. From the very first time I met the audit committee, it was all about what are we doing to manage risk? What are we doing to manage cybersecurity? How are we protecting our most vital assets? So I'm blessed by the fact that the company and the culture of the company take it as seriously as I do personally.
Do you have any recommendations that you would like to see, if you'd like to see happen that would make your job a little bit easier, especially being in charge of security in your organization?
No, as I say, and I'm not saying this because my peers are in the audience, but I really am blessed with, I won't say a blank checkbook because our CFO's in the audience, but I am blessed with the support I need. My hope for my peers, you and I share friends across the valley here who are all CISOs and CIOs. My hope for all of them is that they can find an opportunity to have a relevant risk-based conversation with the board to get the board engaged in their quest, if you will, right? Their journey. Because if it's just a CISO or a CIO, rattling the cages every quarter, people just get tired of that, right? They think the sky is falling until that magic day when you have a breach and then the sky is falling. But I just hope that for all of us collectively that the boards continue to get more sophisticated, more educated, more attentive, and help, right? Yeah. Whether it be money or time or attention, whatever it might be.
No, I really understand that because in my previous job being a CISO, we had a breach. And having to have that conversation with the board and everything on how it happened, why it happened was a very tough discussion with them. And,
you and I have shared some late nights on breaches.
Yeah, I mean, I told the gray hair came from. But it's something that I think, boards need to really start taking a lot more interest in really in addressing these type of issues and being more conscious of what the true risks are with an organization. And I see that coming. I mean, I think there was some study I read that maybe about by the year 2020, we're going to have about half of the boards will have somebody on the board that is very well versed with cybersecurity risks and what it means to the company. But that's only half the companies out there. What about the other half? And if we continue to go down the same path of having these types of breaches, whether the most recent one obviously being between Uber and Equifax, my big concern is government's going to step in and then start putting in unrealistic requirements, regulations, very much like Sarbanes-Oxley did. And you remember how much of a cost and how much of a headache that was when we had to do that at Sun Microsystems. There was 2, 3, 4 years where it was just crazy until we finally got everything under control and cooler heads prevailed.
Well, I think, this generation's version of SOX is GDPR, it's, the federal DFARS regulations, all these things that you and I deal with every single day. And as the regulations begin to be imposed on the public companies, I think the boards will take more and more attention to that.
Yeah.
So the ones who are, again, well-educated, sort of well-versed on the topic is really important. One little tip, I guess, or trick that's worked well for us is, as I mentioned before, oftentimes IT people go to the board, kind of hair on fire, sky's falling. Right. We've actually taken time out of our schedules to bring in third parties to board meetings, whether it be over a casual dinner or a formal presentation, industry experts who can provide kind of their perspective on current state. And it's been really helpful because it's another sort of, quote, independent view for the board, not just Bob's view, but that expert's view. And so the board, all of us are human. We need to triangulate data sources to form an opinion. And so I think having multiple sources or multiple voices at the board table is equally important.
Right. Well, it's a topic I'm sure we can spend hours on hours of talking about, and it's something that will probably keep us up at night.
We'll go have a beer.
Go have a beer, yeah.
All right,
I'm up
thanks.
for that.
Appreciate
Bob,
it.
thank you very much. Good to see you, too.
Right.